Oh, it works. Yeah, so I'm here to talk about this experience that I had in the past years, kind of ever since I joined Babbel, and I think it's gonna be more of a storytelling, not so technical, a bit more light. Because I know it's a heavy development audience, I'm gonna throw in some words like tokens and variables now and then to keep you, to keep you, your attention. So yeah, like Bogdan said, like I'm Ioana. I grew up actually as a human, and as a product designer here in Timișoara. Many of the people here I've worked with. And you know how they say, like when you're a designer, one of the laws of design is that you are not the user. But actually, I think it's really cool when you are the user of a product that you're working on, because you're a lot more involved and it's closer to you, right? So um, this is why Yoyo, you know, like I was highlighting. Many people don't know. Yeah, the purpose, like our purpose as Babbel is to create mutual understanding through language, and that's because we are a language learning app that we teach not over, exactly 15 languages. And we have quite a huge user base. And we are also a really big team, and that's because we are trying to build this multi-platform ecosystem of experiences, right? So we have things like lessons, that's the sort of the backbone of our experience, but then all sorts of ways of practicing vocabulary through speaking, writing exercises, what we call flashcards. We have podcasts, I'm gonna say the word, we have AI conversations coming soon. Yeah, all sorts of activities that help learners practice and learn as much as possible. And for those who don't really like the app world and prefer learning with the teacher, we also have this online live classes. Therefore, we are over 1,000 people, because we also have a lot of teachers teaching these classes. Now, just to give a bit of context on this whole rebranding project that I want to talk about, I want to have a quick look back. So we are here, and I joined Babbel in 2021. I was very eager to learn everything about the product, right, to get to know the product as much as possible. So also, for some of you who know me, Paul here, like before moving there, like I was always trying to kind of build a design system anywhere I was working, like on every product. I was always like a design system advocate. So I went to search for this team to see what they're up to, like how the design system in Babbel looks like. And I offered to help, of course. And they were like, sure, like they were one designer, one developer, you know, like they needed all the help in the world. We were a few designers that offered to contribute. So they came up with this small project, which was like, oh, actually, like we have a bunch of issues with our color palette. There's like a lot of legacy colors. They're all over the place. Like we have some things that sometimes are just color codes. Some things were named like New York, and some things were named Forest. You know, like it was just like a lot of a mess inside this color system. And one of the most requested features was like dark mode, because you know what you do before bed, you just like hang out on your phone and learn the language. So no one kind of picked this issue before, because you know, like we were like, how hard can it be? Like, why did no one do it? Like, just do it. So we got together with these contributors. We were like, okay, let's make a plan. This is a roadmap made by designers. And we were like, we're just gonna start. We're gonna do some quick workshops. You know, we love workshops. We hang out together and do workshops together. So we're gonna do some color audits, see like what we have, start mapping them in a meaningful way. Then just kind of define, name them, go to developers, launch, dark mode, done. In reality, this is what happened actually. So like, we literally like launched dark mode 2.5 years later, but that's because a lot of things happened on the way, you know, right? So first of all, like this was not our main focus. Like I went there in like my first month, right? But I had a bunch of other projects that were my actual job. Like this was my pet project, like a small, tiny thing to do in my spare time between meetings. So like a lot of things happen. Like for instance, in the beginning, when you start this kind of bottom-up initiative, like people are very excited. And then like from like 7 designers, we just went like 6, 5, 4, 3. So very, very fast, we were like a very small team working on this kind of 2 hours a week. And to make things better, at some point the design system team left, they quit. So we were like, us and a few developers that were also like external contributors, we starting being the design system team, like in our spare time, right? So in the end, like things started getting a bit more streamlined, and we had the new design system team joining, like with a new head of design, and like we found the PM that would help us drive this. But like we pushed the whole project throughout to delivery, but we needed someone to actually help us prioritize it, put it on every team's map, right? Because the same as us, every team had their own roadmap and other things to work on. This was kind of like how, what we collected from the app, like a lot of colors all over the place. We grouped them nicely, and you know, like what designers do, like we played with the colors, we arranged them nicely. And I think like just doing this presentation, I realized what was the outcome of this 2 years of work, and it was a table. And you know, it's like a very important table because it had like names, right? Like names of these colors, and like it had like 2 sets of values. There would be like one for light mode, one for dark mode. And it had like ways of using it, like where would you use these colors? And because I'm gonna say tokens quite a few times, just wanted to make it clear. Like now it's a very also like, it's like AI in design systems. Design tokens is the buzzword right now, right? So I had to put it in. But the idea of design tokens is a way of like basically documenting design decisions, and it's like the smallest thing that, the smallest reusable design elements of a design system, right? So if you have these elements, you can put them together and like it's gonna build everything else. Like this is, if you need anything, like if you don't have time to build a design system, you just build this sort of design tokens and slowly build things with them. And they can be in general, like they define properties, like the main things like colors, sizes, space, typography, and radius we have, but I didn't put it there. So how it worked for our color tokens, right? It was like this, like you have a design token, which is a name, for instance, a surface, like a card. And it has a value for light mode, and it has a value for dark mode. So that's great, like the table was really useful. That's all we needed, basically. But it was a bit complicated because, like, it wasn't great because it was working, but we kind of needed like 2 libraries, right? Like we needed like a light mode, a dark mode library. Designers had to switch between this, like to swap to see like how screens looked in light and dark mode, and it was a bit, it was not very streamlined kind of process. Our devs kind of created a way to export these colors to GitHub directly from Figma, which was really nice. Like they would export the tiny swatches like to a library of tokens. And it was cool that we had the ability to change these things here, especially while we were still exploring like in Figma. But I don't know, it was very prone to error, especially me being there. I don't brag about having great attention to detail. I don't. And many times like you had to match the code with the color. It was like a mess. We delivered it. This is here. Right about the same time, like right before launching it, we had like the greatest luck that Figma actually launched variables, the other buzzword for developers. Figma launched variables, and this was really, really nice because now we can actually replicate our token system in Figma and assign these different values to different variables in Figma. Also, our new head of design introduced this way of managing design tokens, which is, what's the name? Token Studio. It began as a Figma plugin, but now it's a whole product on its own. So now you can actually work in Figma and create these tokens, but like you can manage them into a program that it's on its own, and like there's no risk for designers to make breaking changes. Like, because for instance, like renaming a token, or it is a breaking change in general. So I did a few of those. Yeah, and this is how our product looked like back when we released the dark mode. Like, it was not great, but like now at least like we had this the dark mode option. And what was more important for this project was not the actual release of dark mode only, but also with this effort, we managed to clean up all these colors that we had in the background, right? So like now every single element in the interface had a proper color token assigned to it. So if anything bigger or like a bigger change would come, we would be ready for it. Water break. Okay, and this change came like super fast, even before we were actually ready with the dark mode. And this was something that was already like in progress or like being discussed on our product for a while. You saw like the product felt a bit outdated, so we wanted to have a big overhaul visually and as a tone of voice and everything. So as we were working to launch dark mode and we're very close, the rebranding got approved. So we kind of also already started planning for this project. And this was the timeline that the leadership kind of proposed to us. So we had, how many months are there? Like maybe 10 months from the moment it was approved to actually launch a product on web, iOS, and Android that looked completely different, right? And you saw my timeline before. We will have a few months to explore the new brand, kind of like to understand and try to translate this brand book into some sort of a product vision. After which the plan was to take these explorations and start building on this new design system and already start bringing elements in the features, like in the screens of each product team. And with all this prep work done, just have like a few months of implementation and QA to launch this new product. Reminder, like this is how the product looked like at this stage, plus dark mode. It was working, it was functional, we had a lot of users, they were learning, but it wasn't very like pleasant. It was quite outdated. We collaborated with an agency from Berlin called Koto, and together with them, this was the new look and feel and brand book that our visual team kind of explored and brought to life together. Now, to understand a bit of the complexity of the project, I mean, it doesn't seem so hard to change some of these things, but these are some of our ways of working in general as a product company. So we work in product trios, designer, product manager, engineering manager, that usually drive an agile product team, and we each have our own sort of features that we drive forward. And all these teams are working also with other service teams like content design, data, learning experts, the people who build the learning materials. And we're all like at the same time, we're split into different clusters that kind of deliver specific parts of the product. Like for instance, I work in the self-study cluster where we deliver more like the learning experiences inside the app. And there's like a live cluster where they take care of the live lessons. The design system team is a central team, right? Like, so it's a service team that serves all these clusters and teams inside the clusters. And they were the leaders of this initiative because they were going to have a huge impact on the product with this. And we created this core rebranding team together with the experience team, which is a team that we have of designers, visual designers that kind of do more visual explorations, not being very constrained. They're not embedded in product teams, so they just kind of, they're out of the box, thinking how the product could look, taking this vision and like making anything possible with it. And we had also help from the mobile platform team, which would help the design system team build components for iOS and Android. And then it was us, these satellites of the design system team, like for instance, which we were some of the designers leading the dark mode initiative that were usually embedded in clusters, and other principal and senior designers embedded in specific clusters. The value of us being there was like quite big in two ways, because we could bring the knowledge of our clusters and our agile teams inside this rebranding core team, right? Because like they are not in the sprint system. We had like all this. We had a deep understanding of behaviors in general of like our users, of patterns and behaviors, and it was very clear, a very good knowledge exchange that we could provide. at the same time, being part of this core rebranding team, like we could go back to our cluster and to our teams and to all the other designers in our cluster and kind of support them, being aware of like all the decisions done, support them into adopting this new language. Water. It's weird that you hear the gulp, no? Okay, so based on our roadmap, this was our main stages that we have planned for this project, kind of have this translate the vision into the UI, build a new design system, adopt and implement. This part was done by our experienced team. Like I said, they went like wide, sort of doing explorations in all directions, building all sorts of patterns that we might use in the future, and just creating these beautiful screens that afterwards the design system team would take and try to understand like in a more pragmatic way based on what we already had and like where we wanted to go and start building some of these components. We kind of went very like 80-20, sort of with like a 20% effort building 80% of the design system. And of course here, like the foundation for all this was the design tokens. Like having that being done first really helped us to create everything like slowly afterwards. And then we would just like, as we started, like designers started redesigning the whole app, like we would go and pick up on all these new elements and specific patterns that they have experience with and like try to design our own features. Because we had like really a lot of screens, like we went two ways for this. Like we realized that we're not gonna have time to rebrand everything. It would take a lot of time. I mean, for design, it's fine, but it would take a lot of time from an implementation point of view. So we decided to go with this two strategy, kind of rebranding, or fully rebranding some screens, which would mean like adopting the full language and like creating the screens, recreating the screens, and like reskinning, which would be using these design tokens, basically just rebrushing the whole interface, right? Like update the typography, colors, mainly, and some of the spacing sometimes where we had, like as designers, we could not keep our hands, you know, like just a bit, like maybe the spacing too. This is an example of what rebranding meant. Like this was our former homepage, and we started using these new cards with like the images, the cutouts, which were more essential to our new rebranding. And an example of what we call the Explore tab, where you have other experiences to use, turned into a more vibrant, like more bold colors, like clearer call to actions also. And then reskinning, and I think like this is like I love this part because it's just like with such little effort, like you can do so much, and that's the power of the design tokens in general. Like this was for instance, our audio like podcast feature, and this is how it looked just like by applying the new design tokens from the new design system and having nicer covers, right? Another example of this. And yeah, just show like how much you can do with very little actually, right? Now, to kind of support, like I was saying, like we try to support the teams like outside, we started building some adoption tools and collaborative sessions. And you know, like because it always feels like all these processes, when you present them after, they're like so streamlined and it was so easy. We had our things together, and it's not really. So like we're trying to hack and like help in any possible way. And I think one of my favorite hack that I came up with was, I was very obsessed with this new Figma variables. I was very excited about it. And we created this, what we call the proxy library, where now you could map the styles in a Figma library to variables. So basically what we did was having like the original library would be, okay, there's a background color, it's mapped to a hex color, right? But now in this proxy library, it was like, this is a background color and it's mapped to what we actually want it mapped to this color token that's named accent inverse or something like that. And once you would break the styles, which no one ever tells you to do in a design system, like break the styles, like we were like, yes, break the styles, but only this time. It would actually leave the right token in place. So that really helped because designers didn't have to go through a whole documentation that we also didn't have yet, right? Because we were building everything as we were going. And build all sorts of like how-to guides to support designers into these adoptions. And in general, like we had like some quite fun sessions where everyone would bring their features here in a Figma file and like try to understand how we would approach specific features that could kind of develop patterns, right? Because you don't want people to develop things into similar things in two different ways. I mean, the fun kind of ended when, like we call this this is the orange, the dark orange part at the end of the timeline, right? So we call this the rebranding swarm, and this was the moment where like all the teams had to pause whatever they were doing and like abandon their roadmaps, put everything on pause and start working on this, because like it's something that is really complicated to sync, right? We have to like launch all this together. It cannot be like a bit of it is rebranding, but then a bit of it is not. So this moment like just started like, okay, from today on, it happens. Like everyone, like you would go into your Figma file and everyone would be there. You know, like it's also like, it's nice how Figma is collaborative, but sometimes it's like, why is everyone in my file? It's like working on a stage, you know, and you're there trying to make a small update and the eyes are like on you, like, why are you updating something like in this moment? So it was quite fun. And also about this time, like as this thing like started happening with a lot of traction, like everyone being there, our head of design system got COVID. And he was the main decision maker on this, right? So like now everyone, the whole company, like hundreds of people are working on these things and they all have questions. So basically like it was a moment of call center, sort of like working together with like the other designers that were involved in this, and just like being in this rebranding Slack channel, nonstop, like us talking to each other, what do you think we should do? And it was actually really cool because like we worked so close together also with the head of design system that we all had kind of the context and the decision, the power to make decisions, right? Because we were very, very aligned. And I think that was like from a bad experience in a way, like it turned out to be a very positive experience to just demonstrate how important it is to actually have transparency and work together on this, rather than just being a bottleneck and one person having the knowledge. Like we could not wait 1 week for this person to come back and make decisions. Because it was like such a visual project, it was also really hard to QA. So we had to QA it basically. Like, of course, all the QA was working on it. Like, whole company was QAing this project, but we had the eye of saying like that line is not really the right color, which like nobody cared for. Everyone was quite tired, but we're like, no, it doesn't have the contrast. So yeah, we were pretty annoying with these things, but I think it worked out really well. Like in the end, this was the outcome, and I think it's a great improvement from what we had before. It's still something that we're working on. Like for instance, all the things that we have reskinned is something that we're working to also rebrand further on. So like we're still constantly working on this, and this is still not everything, but like kind of to get an idea of like, for instance, like structure on these clusters of like how many screens we had to redesign, which was not the problem, but implement was, right? So do you think we managed to stick to the timeline? I mean, yeah, this wasn't designers who planned, so like we actually managed, and we had like a nice launch party. This is proof that we did. And yeah, just at the end, I just want to share like some of the lessons learned. Like I said, I've said tokens many times. I think like if you don't have time to build a design system, just start with design tokens, and that can grow like in a very beautiful way. It's very you have the control, and you also have control, but you also have flexibility using these systems in general. There's a lot of resources about it. I didn't want to make this design tokens course. How to there's like, I think you can read, like you can do a master's in how to name tokens. Like it's yeah, so just start small, and it can scale really, really nicely. it really, like, for me, it was also like a very good lesson in prioritizations, like even like the decision of like what we're gonna rebrand, what we're gonna reskin, like to just make the product look like a unified experience, but still like not applying the same amount of work into things, or like what components do we build first. So in general, I feel like if you are a designer, you should stay close to your design system team, like whatever level, because there's a lot to learn from them. Like, yeah, it was like a huge like collaborative effort. And it's also because in general, like we all work in those clusters or in separate teams. We all have our own roadmaps and deliver like release dates. And while we do meet some places, like we never have to do such a big thing together. Like it's like one day when we push a button and everything is different, right? So this was like a super great exercise for that, for collaboration. And of course, like, this is like, now I know that everything is forever work in progress, you know, like this was an MVP rebranding, right? Like it's just the beginning of it, and like in general with any product, things are always moving and changing. Like it's one of my favorite stories, how like I studied architecture, and sometimes my parents or my friends would ask me like, did you finish? And I'd be like, no, I did not finish. It's never finished. What do you mean finish? You know, like nothing is ever finished when you design things. So yeah, just like you know that, and always keep learning and iterating. And that's it. Bye. We have, thank you. We actually have like a set of articles that we wrote on this rebranding story from different angles. So if you want the more technical version, there is a more technical version from the design system team about like the management of tokens and pushing things to GitHub and managing things in Supernova and all that. So you can also ask me some of those things in the question booth, but or anything else about Babbel or design. Thank you.
Awesome. Woo. Thank you very much, Ioana.